Okay, I'm back again. I'm not going to do any calculations. I just wanted to do something fun at this point. Have you guys ever seen one of these before? This is a voltage tester where you simply put your battery in like this and it tests the voltage and tells you, it's kind of out of focus there, whether it's good or bad. See, I'm in the green range, so it tells me I have a good voltage on this battery. So how does this work? We've been talking about circuits, but how does this thing work? So I'm actually going to take it apart and show you what it looks like on the inside. Don't do this at home, by the way, it's very dangerous. Not that you'll get shocked or anything, but your parents would probably get mad at you, so that's why it's very dangerous. Because if you break their battery checker, they'd probably be pretty upset. Magnetic screwdriver, very cool. So, what do we have here? This is kind of cool. Got a little spring right there. Why? Well, that's because as I put my battery in there, it adjusts to the size of the battery, right? So that's the spring that pulls it back. You see the wire. Okay, look in very closely. What do you see right in here? Right there. See, there's a little resistor right there. And can you see on this side, there's some little resistors right in here. Does that help? There, see the resistors? Okay. So it's just a very simple circuit, very similar to what we've been working with all along. They just have a little resistor. Now most of the time it's just sitting here open, but as soon as you put your battery in there, you now have a closed circuit. It's going through a little resistor, and it can tell by how much current is going through there whether it's a good battery or not a good battery based on how much current. So how do they tell? How does it calculate the current that goes through? Okay, you see that little thing right there? We're going to take that apart too. Can you see? Yeah, it's kind of hard to see, isn't it? Okay, I'm going to try examining this by using the camcorder. So we're going to zoom in here. So how does this work? Oh. Okay, so if you could see deep down in here, something to point with. How does this work? This little piece right here, this little round piece right there is a little magnet. Let me show you. You can see the magnet grabbed my bolt. So that's a tiny little magnet, the round piece right there. is a magnet. So that piece right there is a magnet. Now what you see right here is a little coil with some wires going around it. So when we put the battery into the wire tester, okay, well I guess I got my bolt out there. So what happens is when you put current through the battery tester, the current goes through this wire looping right there and creates a little magnetic field. We were talking about this in the previous chapter. So the little magnetic field in this little loop opposes the poles of that little magnet and then turns the loop. Let me show you. This is what it looks like when there's no battery in there. Here's what it looks like when there is a battery in there. So see how the little loop has turned? Okay, so let's talk about what we were seeing here. So how does this battery checker work? So basically what you have is you have an open circuit here where you're going to put your battery in. It has a little resistor on either side because it wants to control how much current's going through. Then it comes over here and the wire wraps around and around and around this coil and comes back. So if you were looking at it on the inside here, you saw a little circular piece like this, and that was the magnet. And then around that magnet was another piece that kind of looks like this. It actually goes all the way back in, but around this was wrapped the wire. Right here, this wire was wrapped around this piece. So this piece fit down over the top of the cylinder. So if you were to look down on it like this, you see your cylinder, and here's this piece with the wire going around it like that. There. So what would happen is when you put the current through here, so when I put the battery in here to complete the loop, and the current is flowing through this loop right here, as with anything, when you have current perpendicular to that, so coming out of the board right here would be a magnetic field. So it's basically creating a little magnet. So I have a magnet here that opposes this magnet. Now what would happen if I had a magnet with a north and a south and another magnet with a north and a south? They would oppose each other, right? They would tend to push each other away, and they would turn like this. And that is essentially what's happening here. This is a magnet, and now this is a magnet. This one's fixed, it can't go anywhere, but this one basically becomes like a north-south magnet, and it's going to rotate around this one. The wire of the little sensor, the little wire on the front of this, was connected here. So as this whole unit turned, as it turned around it like this, it moved the little indicator with it. So that's how that circuit works. Now let's talk about another little circuit, another thing I took apart because it's kind of fun to take things apart. You ever seen one of these? This one is pretty pitiful looking. This is one of those little things you see in the dash of people's cars that has the flowers. I've broken off the main flower and the second flower, and all that was left was the one. But how does this work? You probably know it's got a little solar cell on it. That's what you see right there. But how does it work on the inside? So I only keep this so I can take it apart and look on the inside. So let me switch to the other camera, see if we can get a little closer view and see how this works. So here's my little flower. Here's a solar cell right there. So as the solar cell receives ultraviolet energy, it excites electrons inside the solar cell, which creates the circuit. Now let's look, or creates a circuit, or current flow. So let's look at what the circuit looks like in here. zoom in here. So this is the solar cell coming down right here. Goes to a tiny little circuit board. And then you see these tiny little wires coming out right here. Tiny, tiny, tiny little wires. Oh, they're so fragile. They have tape on it to keep them from breaking. And then I flip around to this side on the back. And here's the secret of this little toy. Down inside. And you see that? The wire comes and connects to this little, this little disc right here. So what is going on here? See the two wires coming in on either side? So once those two wires connect to that, that little disc becomes basically an electromagnet because the current induces a magnetic field in that. So it becomes a tiny little magnet. Now on the bottom of this little flicker thing right here is, lo and behold, another tiny little magnet. Let's see. I don't think it's very strong. Let's see if I can stick something on it. Well, it's stronger than I thought. Let go of my pliers. Wow, stronger than I thought. Hold on. Okay, I'm back. I didn't want to let go of my pliers. Okay, so on the bottom of that is a little magnet. So what happens, you have one magnet on the bottom of that piece and another magnet on that coil, but they are opposing each other. So as soon as the solar cell on top gets a little bit of energy and creates the electromagnet down below, these two magnets oppose each other, and this one will begin flopping back and forth as it opposes and attracts, back and forth. So that's what makes it vibrate back and forth. And then as it vibrates, you can see it's going to move the other two with it because they're kind of connected, so it moves in opposite directions. So that's how one of those work. Okay, so I'm going to draw the circuit of our little dissected flower here. So in a similar arrangement, in this case I don't have a battery supplying my voltage source, I have a solar cell. So I have energy coming from the sun in terms of an electromagnetic wave. It excites the electrons in the solar cell and they begin moving, giving me current. They're going to flow through the wire and through a loop and back. In this case, as they're flowing through here, and by the way, you saw on the circuit board that was in here, there was a tiny little resistor in there. I don't know if you could see that or not. So there was a tiny little resistor. Didn't need much of a resistance because there's not a whole lot of current generated by this. So once it goes through here, it basically creates a magnetic field. So this, because as we learned in the previous chapter, a current flowing through a wire creates a magnetic field in a circular direction around it, right? So it creates a little magnet. And that little magnet was what we saw here, the little copper disc down here at the bottom. And that magnet will then oppose the magnet that's on the bottom of this one. And so the two magnets are opposing, attracting, and that's why it's moving. So that's a very simple circuit in a very simple toy.